Tamara Anderson. She is the founder and owner of Culinary and Cannabis Events. Tamara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Can you tell our audience how you first found cannabis? Do you remember the first time you smoked weed?
So I remember the first time I smoked weed, but the first time I found cannabis is a different story. So the first time, not knowing what it was, but the first time I found it, I remember my dad had this box under his bed that you couldn't touch. So it was like, the cigar box. It didn't have a lock on it or anything like that. It was just like this box of dad stuff that smelled funny, that was under the bed, that you knew you weren't supposed to touch because it's under the bed. So that was like my first time knowing about cannabis. My first experience with cannabis was on my graduation night from high school, with like 6 or 8 of my girlfriends were like 18, sitting in my mom's minivan at a Taco Bell parking lot. And mind you, my friends have been smoking since like forever, but I'm like the go-go bunny. I was like, I don't need that. I'm hyper already. I'm the party girl. Y'all don't need me to smoke. I'm fine. So I hadn't smoked up until then, and they didn't pressure me to either. But that was my first experience, and I smoked it. I was like, okay, this is what you guys are like all excited about. Like, I was not impressed. So it didn't become like a regular thing for me or something that was part of my life. But as I got older, going out and celebrating, then it was part of like, socially I smoked at that time.
It's the social campfire to which we all gather,
Yes.
The flame that lights our bowl.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I love the Taco Bell story. I can relate many, many times over to that same experience. So, so now that cannabis, is, you use it more in your adult life, like you mentioned. Do you have a favorite strain, or, do you love vaping? Do you like herb?
So I am an edibles girl. I prefer edibles. And that's because I like the total body feeling. And it depends on the situation in which I'm in. If I'm somewhere where I'm not necessarily can totally relax, then I prefer to smoke, because I can control like exactly how much I'm taking. I generally know how long that will last in my system, but I prefer edibles because I need everything to feel better. So that's my preference.
Is your love for edibles what helped you, to found Culinary and Cannabis Events? How did that get started?
So not necessarily my love for edibles, but my love for having people have an experience in which they enjoy. So I got into cannabis kind of 2 different reasons, but one of the reasons was I have another brand called Sugar and Spice, and I make alcohol infused desserts, right? And that business came out of, I'm a nurse by day. I went into nursing thinking, oh, I'm going to go into this. I'm going to be able to help people, and I'm going to save lives. I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to feel so good because I'm making other people feel good. That's not exactly what nursing is. So I was doing that, and it was stressing me out, and I wasn't happy. And I was like, I need something to balance this out, because it's not healthy for me to just do something that wasn't making me happy and actually would make me physically sick. So I started baking, right? But I'm like, everybody bakes. Like, that's just normal. Like, everybody bakes. So I was like, well, why don't we put some alcohol in it? So it started with that. I live in Southern California, so we were doing a lot of things with like celebrities, launch parties, album release parties. And after like 4 or 5 years, I started saying, well, do you make stuff with cannabis? And I'm like, I do, but not for you. Like, for my friends and stuff I did. So like, that's how that journey started, of like trying to being interested in infusing what I was already making with cannabis. And Culinary Cannabis was birthed out of like me trying to find recipes that had the proper calculation and dosage, because it was so difficult with my other business getting the licensing. Like, if it has this much alcohol in it, you'll need this kind of a liquor license. But if it doesn't, so I was like, if I have this much difficulty with alcohol, it's going to be 100 times more difficult with like cannabis. So I was like, I need to figure this out. So that's how, one of the reasons we got started.
What do you personally believe, or what have you maybe witnessed, over your time doing this, are the benefits to having cannabis or hemp inside your body? Do you believe that they're outside of maybe, emotional benefits? Do you think there are physical benefits that also come from it?
So we do, we're culinary and cannabis. So we have a focus on the culinary side and on the topical side, right? So we started doing events called Canna Spas, and we originally started doing those as just like a marketing way for people to keep people interested in the food events, right? Like smaller events, because our food events are bigger events. But doing those events, we started doing them like every month and doing them in different areas. We would have people that would come and follow us that had like MS, fibromyalgia, that had been off of work on disability for 3 or 4 years. And after they came to maybe 3 or 4 events, they found a product from one of our vendors that worked for them, and they ended up going back to work because now they didn't have to take medications that made them sleepy or made them inhibited to the point that they couldn't drive or they couldn't function. They now found things that could help them so that they would be able to function to go back to work. So personally, I've seen that in my own, in the own circle that I'm in, besides, the relationships I have with people that have like breast cancer or just a variety of different things, and them asking questions and seeing like along the way the change and how that's evolved for them. It's definitely been an impact. And then, like personally, I truly believe that if people know about this plant and know about the things that it could possibly do for them, we could be saving people's lives. And not only that, giving them a better value of life while they're here. You know what I mean? Because I believe that we have our endocannabinoid system, and I think that a lot of medical diagnoses are out there is because we have the deficiency in that. We're off balance. Like we're off balance. So I just think there's a lot of more research that we need to be able to do to pinpoint like what terpenes work for that, how to administer, how that'll be the best way, because there's so much to this plant that we haven't even been able to research yet. But yeah, I love the plant.
As a nurse, as someone in the healthcare industry, we know that we need more research. We need more dedicated individuals out there to bring you relief. I mean, what's one thing that, if you had a crystal ball, you could bring to the cannabis industry? I mean, is it just providing education, which is what, you're already doing? Is it giving into more scientific research? I mean, what would be a solution to some of the issues that you feel like you've come up against in the industry?
One, I think us being able to research the plant and then research it in a variety of different diagnoses and then track that so that we can understand how the plant is affecting people in a positive way in combination with like the medications that they're already taking. Because I never tell someone to stay off of their medication. I think that it needs to be a combination of both, but we can't truly understand that if we're not allowed to track that. If our patients are afraid to come in and talk to us about that, like some people don't talk to their doctors about their cannabis consumption because they're afraid of being reported, fear of like being told, no, you can't. So if we allow that to be an open door, then things will change. But then also like in the healthcare field period, when I went to nursing school, we didn't learn about the endocannabinoid system. So there's a whole system that people in the medical field need to learn about. So it needs to start there with education there and them understanding the plant and how it works in your body so that can trickle down to patients, so that can affect insurance, so that people can get stuff covered. So it needs to start there with not only the education to the consumer and to the brands, but to those in the healthcare facility, healthcare backgrounds, so that they can help implement the change and make effect.
Absolutely. I mean, the stigmas that people still feel in the cannabis industry, whether they're a patient seeking relief or they're a parent who's scared that social services is going to come in and that kind of pushback is what is stalling our progression as we go on, for medical research, for social and scientific research. What are some of the core values of Culinary and Cannabis Event? I mean, we talked a lot about, bringing medical relief. We talked a lot about providing education, but when it comes down to working with the cannabis community, what are some of your core values?
Education is the background to everything that we do. That is first. I believe in trying to educate people in a way that they will consume it and retain it. So that's kind of like why we do stuff outside of necessarily the smoking aspect, because if you're going to smoke, you're going to smoke. People don't generally need to teach you how to smoke other than like learning what strains work for you, learning if do you like blunts better, do you like joints better, do you like dabbing better, like those kind of things I think are more easier to come by. But I think that like, showing people that you can have pain relief through cannabis by giving them a massage, they can actually feel it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that with this plant, it's difficult to change people's mind and perspective by just talking to them about it when we can show them with this plant. But us in the community have to remember that there is such a strong negative stigma around this. We have to present this in a way that people want to learn, that they have the desire to accept the knowledge, that they feel comfortable enough to come ask those questions that we may think are regular questions, but for them that can be difficult. So with me, everything we do has a base of education, and education to the consumer, but also education to those that want to get into the cannabis space. A lot of brands and people that I work with are smaller brands, smaller companies that need a lot of help with like branding, consulting, knowing where to go. I'm good for like the starting point, and lots of people outgrow me, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to outgrow me, but education needs to be on all sides. It needs to be the consumer side, it needs to be the brand side, and it needs to be for medical professionals. They all need the education. Those of us in the cannabis space, we know. But what about those people that don't know, that we want to change their mind? We need to, think about them and consider them.
What does social equity mean to you? We know what the term means, but it's got a different meaning for each and every one of us. What does it mean for you, and what does restorative justice look like in this emerging industry?
I'm gonna give you a real honest answer. Social equity to me is what I've seen is a bunch of BS. It's just to hold up people that it's just a bunch of BS. You have to be within a certain bracket of money to qualify for social equity, but then you have to have enough money to be able to have a location, and then you have to hold that location until they give you the license. Like it needs to be redone. It needs to be redone. If it needs to be actually work and actually benefit the people that it's supposed to benefit, it needs to be redone. And I think that it needs to be, social equity needs to be put together by people that have been in the industry, that have done it, that see how it works. Those brands that have been successful, those legacy brands that have been in the industry for a long, long time, they need to be the ones that are mentoring. They need to be the ones that are teaching, not these people that have no experience whatsoever and come from corporate and are like, okay, we think that this is the best way to do it, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like I'm not a fan of social equity. I'm a fan of the idea and the concept, but it needs to be redone. I haven't seen anybody do it the right way.
I agree with you entirely. I think social equity needs to be redone, re-looked at, re-examined. We take individuals that have prior convictions and we say, okay, let's move your application to the front of the line, but it costs millions of dollars to establish a dispensary. Chances are that these individuals may not be in a position to even get the $30,000 lawyer to start, the application process and to get them from start to finish. I mean, the whole system definitely, I agree with you, needs to be reanalyzed and redone. Have you had a mentor along your cannabis journey, or do you mentor others in this space? Because there is a lot of hurdles people have to go through.
So I don't necessarily have a mentor in the cannabis space. I do have a mentor in the event space, which I actually brought her into the cannabis space. So I have a mentor outside of the cannabis space. When I started doing what I was doing, there were not a lot of people doing what I was doing. So it was kind of difficult for me to find, like a mentor that could guide me on the path that I was on. And it was also like, at the time, the cannabis industry in California was so fluctuating. Like I started before Prop 64, so doing events were a little bit different. And then after, we're still in like the gray area. Like you have an event license, but you have to do it at fairgrounds. It's just like, I'm still in the middle in the gray area. So I don't necessarily have a mentor in the cannabis space. I do have a mentor who's in the event space. And I do have a couple of people that I mentor, which I don't think I'm not actually named mentor, but I have had a lot of people, the majority of the people in my circle that were not in cannabis doing what they were doing before, but I helped turn them in green. I'm really good at like, oh, you do that, but we could use this in if you just add this to like that, and then your profit margin could go like that. So I have, and I don't have a problem with like mentoring, especially like chefs that want to get into them space, massage therapists, estheticians, those kind of people that want to get into the space. I'm really good at giving you guidance and information and instruction and all of, in that space. So if somebody's looking for those kind of things, I'm up for it.
What's a day like in your shoes? I mean, from start to finish, how does it go?
We wake up, we meditate before we do anything else. Then I have to do my regular job, my regular nursing job, which is 9 to 5. So I do that. But in between that, like on my lunch break, I'm taking calls, I'm checking emails, I'm doing interviews on my lunch break. And then after work, there's meetings after work with my team, with other brands, consulting. During the pandemic, we haven't been able to do in-person events. So we've transferred to like our virtual events, which are still unique in their way because we do workshops with DIY kits. So we had our whole 2020 calendar planned out. So we changed that from doing in-person to virtual, where we have like the classes. So you can register for the class where you just get all the ingredients to participate, or you can order a box and I will prepare the box, send it to you. We'll do a Zoom class all together. And we make stuff like massage oils, candles, cocktails. We're doing bath bombs coming up. And then we also added like a spiritual aspect, because for me, like cannabis is very, it's all about, to me, health, wellness, and spirituality, and connecting those three together. So we kind of like created that because I didn't want my audience to feel like, oh, we're in a pandemic, so I'm just gonna like leave you. I'll see you when it's over. Like I didn't want to do that, but I also didn't want to do like, okay, let's just do a Zoom where we all look at each other and look have somebody just talk to us. That's so boring to me. So we transitioned to that, but like, trying to remain and keep the connections, with people during this time is very, it's very vital. Like, I don't think we understand how much we miss physically interacting with people until you told us we couldn't anymore.
For those of us that are following that want to work with you, that want to get involved, maybe they want you to come through or be a virtual presence at a bachelorette party or a dinner party. How can they get a hold of you? How can people work with you?
We definitely do all of those things. We do all that stuff, but you can always reach out to me on social media. I answer my own messages on social media. So that's me. If you contact me, I will respond. You can always email us or follow us on our website for all of that information. But we host bachelorette parties, birthday parties, cooking classes. We have chefs in all of the medicinal and recreational states. If you wanted a chef to come in and do a class or cater for you, we have access for that. I have a list of venues in tons of states. If you're looking for a 420 friendly venue, we have them that allow smoking, that don't allow smoking, that are for small and for big. Like, I'm your resource for all things events wise, virtual or in person. I can guide you and help you with any of those things. And if you want me there, I will show up as well.
Awesome. I love it. That's so great. I can't wait to have my next event and to have you there. What's your website? What's your social media handles?
So our website is Culinary and Cannabis, spelled all the way out, no abbreviations, no, all the way out. On social media, you can find us under Culinary and Cannabis on all places but Clubhouse. We're under Cannabis. Somebody took Culinary and Cannabis. I don't even know who it is. Why would they do that? I don't know. But you can find us on Clubhouse under Cannabis. But Culinary and Cannabis is where you can find us. Google us, look us up, hashtag us. We're there.
Yeah, make sure you get them at your next event.